Before I do anything, I gotta pour myself some morning coffee. So what am I doing here? So I was thinking this morning that I'm gonna refactor a bunch of stuff on this silly little project I've been working on. And before I do that, I kinda want to see what I've done so far, and looking back as I continue to work on this project, I want to see the decisions I made and the learning that I've done, because the project is a learning exercise. It's not necessarily like an attempt to make a thing. But anyway, this is completely unrelated to it. I just adore this picture. I did this. I was proud. So anyway, going into Unity. Ba ba da ba. The project's called JunkPunchero. There's no meaning behind the word. It's literally just my nonsensical gibberish that, if you know me by now, you know that's a thing. So in fact, before I get into what it looks like now, where is it? I made a couple videos in the very... Oh god, that's blinding. VLC doesn't have a dark mode. They have a skin mode, but it's annoying to use. Okay, so that was the first video I ever made of JunkPunchero. Ever made. I say that as if it's like from ancient times. It's literally like 6 days ago. Yeah, these models... First of all, these models, they're not supposed to be anything. Although they do kind of look like, what did my one friend say? They look like little birds. So I extrapolated from that it's actually a bird that got too fat for the birdhouse, and it kind of like broke through the sides. Whatever. I just needed an object that I could tell what left, right, and front is. So I actually taught myself how to use Blender real quick, and I made that little dude. It's really, really annoying to export a model from Blender to Unity because they use two different coordinate methods. So what is considered forward and up in Blender is not forward and up in Unity. And neither of them are right. They're both very useful ways of dealing with coordinates. But as you can see here, the z-axis, z-positive in particular, is the up direction here. But if you go to Unity, the up is actually the y-positive. And that leads to some issues. So what you have to do in this is transforms, relations. You've got to set the relations here. Then when you export it to an FBX, because this is the file that Unity uses, you also have to transform those coordinates so that what you see on the screen matches the coordinates in Blender, and then those coordinates match what you're converting it to into Unity. Really annoying. I spent a day and a half trying to figure out if there's a better way to do that, and it turns out no, that's actually the normal workflow for people that use Blender. And sometimes I think what people do is they'll actually reorient the transform of their model so that like it's facing in the right direction. Stuff like that. But I'd rather not, because then what happens is when you export it to Unity and you have these models now. So we'll go to box character. Oop, not there. We'll go to the prefab of the player. So then when you have the box character, so the box character's transform is unique from the parent object's transform. So this is like an empty box we'll call player, and inside the box is the model that you see on the screen. And the model's transform is in relation to the player, while the player's transform is in relation to the world. So if these transforms are Jankerdoodle, then they're going to be Jankerdoodle when they're imported. So yeah, I'm rambling. I've had coffee and Adderall, and I have a doctor's appointment, so I'm edgy. Blah 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 blah. But yeah, I taught myself how to Blenderate, so that was pretty cool. It's really hard. Blender has all these. It's very like hotkey oriented. Like you can't just move something, right? You can't just fucking move all these buttons. None of these buttons work. You have to hit G to move it, and then you're moving it around all weird, and then you have to hit like X to lock it to that axis, Z, Y. It's like, all right, that's cool. And then it's like, all right, well, I want to rotate it. You hit R, and same deal. And then if you want to actually like extrude any of the faces, you have to tab to go into edit mode. And you go here, and then you hit like R, and oh. Anyway, that was important for you to know. Oh, and the other day to test an idea out, I actually made a second box. I call it the Nightmare. I'm not going to explain that. Does that need explanation? That doesn't need explanation. See, I can't even freaking move the screen. I'm so stupid. There you go. Yeah, this is called Nightmare. I wanted to have two different models so that I can see how Unity would handle models in a prefab, but I'll show you what that means. So, okay, so I had little movie guy moving. I was happy that I got the camera working. Now here I've got an animation that triggers. That's his attack. I was very happy about that. Does this go to the next one? Yeah, it does. So what did I do here? You're watching a video of me watching a video. How's your day going? I don't even know what the hell I'm doing in here. Is it gonna do something? Hey, I'm making my own reaction video. Oh, there it is. I was so happy I made an idle animation, and it's literally just a cycled transform that goes up. Oh, that's right. And then I made a wiggle wobble. I made a move animation that only moves while he's walking, and he wiggle wobbles. I am still very proud of that. Little bird man dude junkie is fully fleshed out. So then this was a couple days ago. The reason those guys are white is because I'm using a scriptable object, which is a data container in C#, to house a whole bunch of variables. And I'll explain probably in another video what that means, but it allows for modularity. Like one of the most important things when you're coding, especially if you're going to be coding with other people and you're going to be coding things that interact with things that interact with things, polymorphism is really important. Like you want to be able to create a base that then can branch off into other things. So you make, like, in the context of this, you make a character, and then as your game grows, that character can be an NPC, it could be an enemy, it could be a player, various other things. And then NPCs could be like villager or penguin from the sun, that kind of stuff. Scriptable objects make that super, super easy. It's like the thing. It's the thing. I'm trying not to swear. I've probably sweared a dozen times and I didn't even notice. Oh, I made this rock too. I'm very proud of that. Oh yeah, so they're white because the scriptable object differentiates what material they're using, and Unity material is basically the texture. So prior to the game starting, they don't have one. And that I'm actually changing, but that's why I'm making this video. So as it stands right now, here we go. Ooh, I want some coffee. You're going to just look at my screen while I drink some coffee. I should probably edit this. Nah, that's an extra step. I don't like steps. Alright, so right now we've got little Punchero right here. We could zoom in on him. Oh my god, he looks so bad when you zoom in. Look at that. He's still idles. He still wibble wobbles. If you look, enemy is wibble wobbling too. Or I named him NPC. Yeah, it's, oh god, ADHD. Let me tell you. I have renamed that thing 20 times and I don't even use it. So yeah, they actually both inherit from the same animation controller. What an animation controller is it's a part of an object that tells the object what to do during certain animation events. So by making an animation controller that I could apply to multiple things, they all kind of behave the same way. Kind of think in Dark Souls how most of the NPCs behave under the same rules that the player character does, right? Like physics affect them the same way, damage affects them the same way, all that stuff. So yeah, he's actually inheriting the animation from player. he doesn't attack or anything, but the idea behind that is when I put logic behind the enemy, I could reuse the animation script and the attack script from the player to just have the AI do it with the enemy. So anyway, blah blah blah, wibble wobble, wibble wobble. Oh, look at him wobble, look at him wobble. Oh, we went behind the rock. Oh, and then we could attack. Hoi, hoi, hoi. Ow! These are my console debugs to let me know when things happen because I don't know how to code and I don't know how to live my life. So these let me know that certain functions were called. So that's basically the functionality I've got right now. It's not much. I've already like refactored this thing 12.5 times. We've got the manager script that wasn't actually even called manager. I spent a good 15 minutes renaming this for no reason. I'm using a singleton design, which basically means there's only one manager that persists throughout the whole game experience. And what the singleton does is like if somehow another manager exists through the bajillion of things that can happen, that manager doesn't count. This is the manager. That is the singleton in the most layman of terms. I used to have a thing that instantiated, which means like to create an enemy at a specific spawn location, because what I was trying to do is I want to make as much happen in code as possible. I don't want to hard code too much. I don't want things to be dependent on like scenes and like relation to other objects. So I kind of wanted to just set like here's the space. The enemy can spawn in these areas of that space. It could be any enemy. It could be any of these spaces. And then, I started thinking about squirrels or like, what does purple taste like? And, so then we've got the player. Actually, let's go to the character. So then the character comes in, right? So the character inherits a scriptable object called scriptable character, which I'll explain. And then he's got a model, and then he's got some health, which is redundant. So any character that I put this on is going to have these attributes. They're going to have health, they're going to have strength, they're going to have speed. And I was like, all right, yeah. So what I want to be able to do is like anytime me or whoever's working on a project with me is like, oh, let's make another character. They don't have to go through the rigmarole of, all right, let me make all the stats and all this other stuff. They could just go, boom, it's got a character, the end. So yeah, I started thinking of like, all right, what does every character have? What does every character do? Well, every character should have the ability to die. And that's where death comes in. And then that triggers the death animation, which triggers this. Then I ran into a problem because Unity doesn't acknowledge animation events on parent or child objects, only the object that the animation controller is on. So if this script is on the parent, meaning like that box that holds the models and stuff, but the animation controller lives on the model, then the animation controller won't do any of the shit I want it to do. I'll show you what I mean. So in the case of box character, the animator is right here, and it's got the animation controller on it. And this is the shell. This is the box that he lives in, the parent. So the parent holds the script, all the logic that goes behind a character. But the animation controller lives on the model, and Unity doesn't like that. So what we're looking at here is here's the animation. Here's the bonk animation. We could even whatchamacallit, preview it. Bonk, bonk, bonk. See, he could bonk too. And then what else do we have? He could walk. See, this is what I mean. It's so cool. Anytime I make a character, they could use the animations I made for the player. And it doesn't even have to be this model. It could be something completely different, which is why I made the nightmare before. But, okay, so the character dies, right? Here's the death animation. What I wanted to do was at the end here, destroy the object, right? Like the enemy's dead, any data that needed to be transferred is transferred, and then here we would add what they call an animation event, right? Add event. That's where the problem lies, right? In order to add an event, which is basically a function call, the script needs to be on the same thing the animator's on, not the parent. Which means I would have to take the character script and move it onto the model. And I didn't like that because the design I was going for was to have these open boxes, right? Where an NPC is a type of character. An enemy is a type of NPC. And enemies could have different models. So I don't want the model's logic to be on the NPC. And I realized, well, that makes perfect sense. It's not actually a problem. I'm just a fucking idiot who's never really done this before. So what I need to do, and I just haven't yet, is like the animation logic needs to go on a separate script that will then go on the model. Or something like that. Or make like prefabs of the model, because models aren't prefabs. And then take all the other like data logic and script logic and put that in character. So basically when like death happens, all that shit happens on the model. So that's got to get refactored. Completely. Like I want to completely change where everything exists and where it gets called. What else do I have so far? When the game is active, you can click the floor, or you can click Bobby Joe Hankins. Here's Bobby Joe Hankins. Oh, look at him, he's dying. He's still there. He's still there. So what's happening here with the clicking is my player now. Now my player was a okay, so here's another thing that I was refactoring. I was originally making player inherit character, and then I ran into some issues, and I was like, you know what? Until I get these issues fixed, we'll have player inherit from mono behavior. And what I mean by inherit is these classes actually pull a bunch of stuff, for lack of better words, from other classes. So Unity has this thing called mono behavior. It's this huge library of different classes and functions and behaviors and all this other fun stuff. That's where it gets like the idea of start and update, which gets called at the beginning of the game and then every frame. Those are all from mono behavior. But you can actually have your script inherit from other scripts. So like character, which inherits from mono behavior, and then player would inherit from character, which means it gets all the shit that I made in character and all the shit that's in mono behavior. Awesome. Anyway, I changed that for some reason. Whatever. Point being. So on update, which means every frame, every rendered frame, this calls all this stuff. So what it's basically doing, and I want to refactor this too. Every frame it's looking to see if I've hit either the mouse button left or right, and they're not actually the mouse button left or right. Unity allows you to label an input and have various input types for it. So in this case I have Fire 1, and I've set in Unity Fire 1 could actually be left mouse button, or I want to say left control. So that way you could use keyboard controls or you could use the mouse controls. And Unity comes built in to acknowledge the Microsoft controller driver. I forget what the hell it's called. X something or other, right? Xbox, X Next, Xbox, and XX. But yeah, so what's cool about this is I don't have to write extra logic for each input type. It's just whatever Fire is to the player's configuration goes. That also allows me later to set up key remapping. Cool stuff. So when you left click, it's going to shoot. It's going to call this function, which in turn shoots a ray. Raycast is basically, in this case, it's an imaginary line that goes from the camera to the point on the screen that I clicked. And what the game's doing is it's saying, "Hey, what the hell did you just click? What did you do here?" And so when you click something, everything is attached to a layer. No, when I say layer, it's not like a rendering layer. It's not like, oh, this monster's on top of this monster. No, it's just a category that things exist in. And I'm going to have the character do different things based on what it just clicked, with the hope of this being largely a one-handed game, something that you could just think of it like kind of like Diablo or something like that, where like you could just kind of left click to move or left click to attack or right click to do another thing. That's effectively what the design I'm going for with this is. So the ray's looking like, hey, is it case 3, which is an enemy? Then let's start attacking. And if it's not, then make sure you're not attacking and walk over to here. Oh, just logic. I'm not going to explain all that because why would I? What's next? Floor is part of terrain, and the reason I did that, again, that polymorphism, that modularity, um, I want an object. So anytime I make a thing, like, oh, let's make a rock, let's make a tree, let's make a whatever, I would love for it all to just be like, all right, here's all the properties that terrain normally has. So it's going to inherit those, and then this specific thing will have its own unique things. Like, all right, all terrain is obscuring the character's movement, but this terrain is attackable, so that you could like break this wall or something like that. That's why terrain is there. Practice rock. I'm so proud of practice rock. What else? Yeah, that's effectively it. That's where I am. So why am I making this video, and why have I rambled for... Is there nothing that tells me how long I've been recording? 20 minutes? I've been talking for 20 friggin' minutes? Oh my god. That is fascinating. That is horribly fascinating. I'm redoing all of this. So I have fallen in love with this concept of scriptable objects, and I want to use it for everything. And as I said in the beginning of this 21-minute video, 21.21, oh my god, it's some palomino. I'm doing this just to learn. I'm trying to learn coding concepts, game design concepts. I'm trying to learn best practices. I'm trying to learn designs, like development designs. I'm trying to learn basic patterns, all that stuff, and this helps me. I want to see just how much of a game I can make with scriptable objects. So what are scriptable objects? Scriptable objects, as we'll see with scriptable character, do not inherit from monobehavior. This allows them to be much, much nicer on memory. Much, much, much nicer on memory. It also allows them to exist outside of a game object. When I say game object, it's like, oh, you mean like this stuff? Yeah, kinda. Anything that exists in Unity's editor lives in a game object. And anything that's a game object needs monobehavior, which again becomes a memory issue. For like, I mean, for God's sakes, like Hearthstone was made out of this. Memory issue is not going to be a problem with my games. So with a scriptable object, we contain data. So in this case, scriptable character. Going back to what I was saying before, what's a character? Every character's got a name. You can't use name because name is already like part of the system nomenclature. Every character's got to have a material and a model. Every character's going to have their health, strength, and speed. So I could effectively take this shit out of character. And this is, where everything became a mess. And so on and so forth. Like every character is going to have an AI pattern. Every character is going to have different things they can and cannot interact with. But like anything that all characters will have will be in scriptable objects. Cool. Bingo bango. That's nice. So how does it work, especially if you can't put it on objects? Well, you can't, but you can reference it in other scripts. So in character, I reference a scriptable object called character. Okay, I could delete all this stuff, but whatever. Again, I'm deleting everything. So we go back into our editor, and I made this a serialized field for this very reason. Where's our prefabs? Prefab, player, no, prefab NPC. So he inherits the character script, right? Sammy Slyfeather inherits the character script. The character script wants a scriptable object. This is where it gets super fun and modular. I've got a buddy I know that like is going to adore this concept once I've got it working right. So you can then make any scriptable object you want. Like let's make a new one right now. Scriptable object, we'll call it Henry Hoffenpuffer. Henry Hoffenpuffer. He has a purple model, or a purple material. He is shaped like the Nightmare. He has a health of 3. He has a strength of 1 and a speed of 1, right? Done. I just made a new character. New car. Henry. We'll call him Henry. Henry. Now, Henry still technically doesn't exist. This is not a game object. This is not something that I could put on the screen. But what you could do is you could make a prefab. You can make a new one. We'll call it, instead of NPC, we'll call it NPD. NPD, we're going to make a prefab of NPD. The reason you do that is because once I'm done setting up NPD, I can make hundreds of them. I can make them in different scenarios. I can make them in different scenes. Awesome. So NPD, okay. So NPD is a character, right? So we're going to go to scripts. We're going to give him a character. Character wants a character script. Scriptable object. Let's make him Henry. Boom. This is redundant. The model it's asking for, it's asking... That's in scriptable object, but because I already made a stupid the other day, we'll do that. So, okay. We'll go back to our prefab of NPD. Here's Henry. Put the nightmare model on him. Henry has everything we need. So I'm going to delete this just so you can see how easy it is. So now we want to put Henry in the scene. Let's put him in this fucking scene. And there's Henry. If I had set everything up right, because I've got like 6 different ideas going at once, and I've half deleted all the other ones. But in theory, this guy now has health, animation, behavior, just like all the other guys. I just am being lazy about it. But that's the goal. I think I can use those scriptable objects to do more than just make a variety of characters. I think I could use these scriptable objects to actually make... How do I word this? Shareable variables? So, in my scriptable object, let's go back to the scriptable object script. We have like a title, a health, a strength, a speed. Let's say the game's like deep in development, right? We've got 10 levels, we've got 100 enemies, we've got a character that has like 1,000 different potential skills. What if while we're developing, where we're like, oh man, what if the character had mana, right? And we're like, oh shit, so do we have to go through everything and make mana now? Like, does every character need to go through this? I want to make a scriptable object of like just stat. And then health is an instance of stat. Strength is an instance of stat. That way, anytime you decide you want to make like a new metric, boom. And then, because that's a scriptable object, anytime another object needs to work with it, boom, nice and easy. So like, you have a health bar that needs to know the player's health. Awesome. But now we want to make a mana bar. Instead of going through all the rigmarole of... I said rigmarole twice in 28 minutes. Instead of having to like recode another bar and recode it for mana, like that all basically exists. It's all templates. It's all prefabs. It's all base stuff. It would be so easy, and it doesn't have to interact with other stuff. Because what I've noticed is anytime I make a change in something, even something that is inheriting from something else, you've got to go in like 8 different spots and like readjust. Like say you made a list of a whole bunch of things, and then you added a thing to it. You have to go everywhere that list lives and make sure that it's acknowledged. Interfaces are a pain in the butt with that. So yeah, that's where I'm going. And I've now rambled for a half an hour. I've really got to cut this short. I'm going to hopefully cut this down to like 5 minutes. I don't know how. But I am now going to delete everything besides the floor, basically. And I'm going to rebuild it from the ground up using as much scriptable object as possible. And my goal, at least with this, is to make one playable scene that at any moment you decide you want to add a new thing to. It's as simple as just creating a new scriptable object. It's just as simple as going right-click, create, scriptable character, and naming this one Lyle Wiggins. The end.